The Healing Through Love podcast with Sharlene Lynch and Rose Davidson. You battling frenemies in your workplace? Amber Tichenor in episode 25 discusses with us how we can overcome those frenemies for a better workplace.
Knowing that you look at how much time you spend at work in a corporate environment. You have to feel comfortable to be yourself, and you have to feel comfortable to raise your hand and speak out and not be worried about being reprimanded. So I do see, I study psychological safety, but I've heard it a lot more in the past year since COVID. I think you see a lot of change since COVID has happened. And
yes,
there's people are going to say there's negative things, but I also do see that work environments are really putting an effort to make positive change and make it for the better for people.
So true.
The Healing Through Love podcast with Sharlene Lynch and Rose Davidson. The Healing Through Love podcast with host Sharlene Lynch and Rose Davidson would love to acknowledge Global Glamping Charities Incorporated for generously supporting this podcast. Global Glamping Charities, solving homelessness in all of its forms. Reach out to them at globalglamping.org.
Welcome to another episode of Healing Through Love. Each week, we share ideas, experiences, and resources to increase the awareness of domestic and family violence and to empower survivors to grow and thrive. We talk with experts who share their advice, or with people who have experienced abuse, no matter where they are on their journey. This is all about healing through love. And now, here are your hosts, Sharlene Lynch and Rose Davidson.
Hello and welcome to the Healing Through Love podcast. I'm your host, Sharlene Lynch from sharlenelynch.com. Healing Through Love is a social enterprise whose vision is to shift awareness on family and domestic violence survivors and support them through the journey. Our mission is to provide family and domestic violence survivors with a soft place to land by offering them advice and services available to them and their families. We interview experts and survivors who share their personal stories and offer advice to those who have experienced abuse, no matter where they are on their healing journey. Today, I've got an amazing guest, Dr. Amber. She is a psychologist, and she's going to be talking with us today in and around her process and her books. Hello, Amber. How are you?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm well, thank you.
It's so great to have you here. I'd love to know why did you step into what it is that you do? It's a big job, big shoes to fill. And what's your reason why?
Well, I'll say I stumbled on it. So when I was getting my dissertation for school, the psychology I'm in is the psychology of the working environment. So I had to write my dissertation about a problem I saw that was occurring. I knew I wanted it to be about women. I wasn't exactly sure what that was. And at the time, I was a consultant in Washington, D.C. with a very well-known client. And I saw it. I saw this female rivalry occurring. I saw that I call it the elephant in the boardroom. It was just being swept under the rug, and it was disruptive to the culture, and good women were walking and nothing was being done about it. But by default, since nothing was done, the negative behavior was endorsed. So fast forward, I got my degree, I moved, I was consulting at a project, and I was dealing with an unsavory woman, and I just thought we were having a communication issue, but it went on, and I was miserable, and I dreaded going to work on Sunday. I had the Sunday blues, and I was driving to work one day, and I tried everything to make it work. I would put it back on me, and I was talking to my mom in the car, and she said, "I hate to see how you doubt yourself because of this woman." And I went, "Oh, like this is what I've studied. This is what I know, yet I didn't see it firsthand happening to me. And that's when I had my aha moment. I thought, gosh, if I've studied as in-depthly as I have, but I didn't see it, what's it doing to women who are losing their voices but can't voice what's going on, and they feel alone? So that's how I got to my why.
Oh, I love it. So I love it when it's a personal journey that gets us there. And I can see that you're very passionate about this. And if we asked like 10 women, I think we'd probably get 8 women saying they've experienced something similar on one scale or another in their vocation. And wow, so it's very prevalent. Do you have any statistics in and around the prevalency of this?
I don't have a specific number, but when I speak about this and do trainings and workshops, I always ask, I probably have 10 questions that I will ask. And I focus on the work environment, but it can happen in your neighborhood. It can happen at your church with your families. So I'll say, if you ever experienced this, raise your hand. If you've experienced this and this, raise your other hand. If you've experienced this, stand up. And it's shocking that there are any women that don't have a hand raised. Like you said, it's 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. It's very actually rare to have a woman for me to meet a woman who doesn't have some form of an experience, whether it's at work or socially, but it's that prevalent, unfortunately.
And like, wouldn't you think that with the shift in power on this planet at the point in time, that we would be banding together more to support each other on this journey? So is this an historic thing? Is this new? Where does it fall on the timeline of being human?
It has been around for a long time, unfortunately. And I think I always like to say, wow, with the shift of where women are, hopefully it is improving. But, it's interesting, even with the pandemic, some of the stories that I would hear that happened when women were isolated, I was shocked. Like, oh my gosh, like this is when we need to band together. So it's been around. I just think from the research I've done, it's something that's not talked about. For one, it's often very intangible when the behavior is occurring. So it's kind of hard to place your finger on it to say, well, she's doing this to me. And often when it first starts to happen, I'll think, well, why did Rose do that to me? I didn't do anything to her. And so then you'll doubt yourself. You'll think, no, I'm imagining it. So it's not tangible, it's passive aggressive, and it's very hard to pinpoint the behavior.
Okay, so I have to ask, because I've been through this myself. And now looking back on my situation, I've got to ask, what is your opinion, Dr. Amber, about how much of this is our own stuff that we're bringing to the table and our vibration is matching their vibration and we're having a head on? Like, how much of that is us playing the victim in this scenario?
Well, Sharlene, I think you bring up a good point. So one of the first things I tell the individuals I chat with is, first, you have to assess the situation and look at the role you're playing. Maybe you aren't playing a part of it, and maybe you're just on the wrong path at the wrong time. But I am a firm believer that women who love themselves love other women. So if you don't like yourself, or you're having that, I call it your inner she bully that kind of sits on your shoulder and is talking like that. If she's around a lot, it makes it hard to be nice to other people. So I think you really have to look inward to see if you are indeed playing a part in it. And sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're just on the receiving end of somebody who wants control, who has no self-esteem, who doesn't feel good about herself, who, thinks there's not enough room at the top for more than one woman. So the scenarios are vast, and chances are you're just there and you're the target, but you have no control over her behavior. You only have control over your own and how you respond to it.
Yes, and though when we're out the other side and we are, loving ourselves, living life on, on track and doing all the things that we need to do for our next level of ascension, are we not in a different position where we can draw stronger boundaries and we can call people on their behavior without that emotional attachment? And I'm just thinking about my own situation where I wasn't in that space and where I wasn't able to draw the boundaries. And all I was able to do was to run to HR because all I knew was to follow the process. I didn't know how to stand up for myself in that situation.
Well, and it's very hard when you're in it to talk about it because, again, it's that intangible behavior. But yes, I think if you've experienced it, I think you have an uber awareness that type of behavior can exist. And so your feelers are out there, just, it when you see it. I think it also comes with maturity, like, in age, you're not going to put up with things, and I think it's boundary setting. Sometimes it's hard to call the other person out, especially she might not do it in front of other people. But one way I think, which is a good deflector, is when in doubt, you can always use humor. That can make light of a situation, but it also says, I see you and I see how you're treating me, and I'm not going to, stand for it.
I love that use of humor. It's fantastic. That is a great idea. So is this something that you do in your workshops?
Yes, because I think it's a way to call it out, but not stoop down to the behavior that she's projecting towards you. So I see you, but no, you can't get away with that. So
yes. Okay. So these workshops that you run, are they at C-suite executive level? Like, where are they in the pyramid of the business?
They vary. So I've done smaller groups. I've done, smaller organizations. I'm really trying now to get into the larger organizations. I think the root cause of this type of behavior in a working environment really stems from a lack of psychological safety. So it's the ability to feel that you are accepted and that you belong 100% for who you are. So trying to get into the larger organizations, whether it's a full female rivalry situation, which I think if it occurs long term is bullying behavior, and trying to just showcase what this is and how to overcome it to be better together.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a very big blanket, really, that you're throwing. So it can be in all shapes and forms and all levels of the organization. I love it. Yes, and even just as an educational piece, if people don't have a level of awareness, this is an important piece for people to know.
It is, because I think when I first realized it and I saw it and how disruptive it was to the culture, especially if you're at work and maybe the individual targeting you is somebody that is in charge of your promotional track or your paycheck, you're in between a rock and a hard spot, because that's your job and that's how you make your money. And so sometimes you might not have a safe place to go to. Maybe HR isn't effective, or maybe they don't believe you because they want proof. And sometimes it's hard to show proof. So it's, it's not always so easy. When I had it happen to me at work, I quit. I was a consultant though, and that was a project I was on, but not everybody can just do that, and so it can be hard to look for a job, but it is especially difficult if somebody has that control over you. It can make you miserable.
Absolutely. I love that you mentioned Maslow's hierarchy, and it's that base level, the bottom of the pyramid, having this belongings need met. Now, how can we in an organization, small or large, how can we work to tick that box, and so people can have a safe, comfortable, psychological, safe environment? What can we do?
I think it's all about open communication. First off, you have to talk about the things that have previously not been maybe mentionable. So you have to have that open communication. I think you implement, for this type of awareness, organizations have yearly HR training or different things that you look at once a year or once every couple of years. Bullying is in that category, and I think this falls under that banner. So it's having awareness that this is another form of that type of behavior. I think it's also important to implement bystander training. So if you see it, you can call it out and know that there is trust, that you're not going to be reprimanded for, raising your hand or saying, I see something. And then it's not 3 strikes, you're out. It's just 1 strike. We don't tolerate this type of behavior towards other people.
And now everything, Dr. Amber, that you're offering is in and around females. And
Yes.
is it also for people who identify as female as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've given a lot of talks to men as well, because this impacts them. And whether maybe it's a male that's leading a group of women, or maybe they have, well, obviously if they're married or if they have daughters or sisters, it's just the awareness. Because typically, and again, I'm generalizing, but I didn't study the behavior in men, just to put that out there. I only studied women, but typically men do not act this way as the females do.
Well, isn't that interesting? And so why is that so?
When I started doing my research, when babies are born, everybody is born with these same types of aggressive traits. When little girls are around the age of 7 or 8, they begin to develop social intelligence earlier than little boys do. So there were no theories out there on female rivalry. So I had to resort to aggressive behaviors as, my grounding theories. So with the development of social intelligence, girls start to use their mouths as forms of aggression versus the physical, let's go rough and tumble it out, And so that's how the change starts to begin with women. So often if you have Bob and Dan in the boardroom and they are belting it out over something, and well, Bob, I disagree with you, but Dan, I think you're wrong. They could be out on the golf course an hour later having a beer, and it's all behind them. Women often get in their head, and it becomes more about just what is at hand, because women typically compare the view of themselves with other women. So it's not as simple. It's not so black and white.
That's fascinating. Isn't that fascinating? And so is this a piece we could be taking to schools? Is this something that we could be teaching children in schools, girls in schools, about how we can better support each other, how we can find another way to handle this behavior, how can we be supportive of others? And I'd like to get it before it gets to the boardroom.
I 100%. I've spoken to, we have a local group here, the National Charity League, and it's mothers and daughters, and it begins in 7th grade. I've spoken to a lot of those groups because it happens younger than that. I have a daughter now who's 14, and I remember feeling shocked that when she was in kindergarten and she came home and she was talking about some of these mean girl behaviors on the playground, and I thought, gosh, this is a learned behavior. This is not something that's intrinsic within these little girls. They're mirroring what they see from somewhere at that age. So I think the more we have awareness about, you can always be kind, you can always have your boundaries, but you can always have a voice, and you can collaborate together. It doesn't have to always be a competition. Don't get me wrong, I think positive competition is a wonderful thing, but it doesn't have to be the negative, ugly competition where you're tearing each other down.
Yeah. So again, is this internal work? Is this, if we felt better about ourselves and felt more empowered, then we would be happy to pay it forward and make a difference for others and to hold the space for them while they're processing. Is this more internal work than it is external work, Dr. Amber?
I think it's a combination. It goes back to, women who love themselves love other women. That is like one of my mantras, because if you're happy in your own skin, you have more self-awareness, you're more confident. We always have that voice on our shoulder. I think that sometimes we have to shut down. She's there a lot, but I think it's recognizing that what I bring to the table is different than what you bring to the table. We can complement each other and work together. And I think it's getting over being the victim, which you mentioned earlier. It's also not looking at it as the scarcity approach, but more of the abundance approach, because I firmly believe some of it has to do with mindset. Absolutely. Some of it, again, there are just sometimes some mean people out there, but I like to not think that that's the norm.
So I'm just thinking about the two different ponds that we swim in. So you swim predominantly in a corporate pond. I swim predominantly in an entrepreneurial pond.
Yeah.
And so just looking at that, in order for, especially through COVID, for people to survive and thrive, is that they needed to work collaboratively. There wasn't any choices. They needed to share platforms. They needed to do things in bulk. They needed to link arms and, unite, move forward. And it's different in the entrepreneurial space than it is inside of a business. And how can we bring some of that entrepreneurial spirit, that linking arms and moving forward and all as one, into the work environment? Is that the work that you do?
I think so, because I do see that change. I think it comes down, I mentioned it again, the psychological safety aspect, but it's knowing that look at how much time you spend at work in a corporate environment. You have to feel comfortable to be yourself, and you have to feel comfortable to raise your hand and speak out and not be worried about being reprimanded. So I do see, I study psychological safety, but I've heard it a lot more in the past year since COVID. I think you see a lot of change since COVID has happened. And
yes,
there's people are going to say there's negative things, but I also do see that work environments are really putting an effort to make positive change and, make it for the better for people.
That's so true, so true. So when I'm not coaching, I'm running live events, and what I notice is that some of these events are only 3 hours, some of them are 3 days. And what I notice is straight off the mark, what we need to do to create in that room, which is a mix of men and women, predominantly women though, is to create that psychological safety, because to get the most out of it for them and also for us, us to see the greatest level of transformation for people, even on a couple of hours or 3 days, is to start at psychological safety. Like, it needs to be the benchmark for where you start. And I'm guessing that needs to be across the board, even inside corporations.
Absolutely. The premise of that is you have to be able to be vulnerable. And that's in work. It's getting to know people who you're working with. It's not just knowing them as a colleague, or I work with so-and-so. You have to bring some of the personal in, but it's the act of rewarded vulnerability, because when you open up, I believe some of the barriers and walls come down. And then once you get to know people as true people, and I know maybe what your family's doing or this or that, then it puts a bigger stake in the game.
And creates more connectedness. Yeah, so that's exactly how we start the events, is we start the facilitator sharing a bit of an open wound and then giving permission to the people in the room to sort of follow suit and talk a little bit about, not too much, just enough, just so that we know where everyone's coming from. I love it. I love the work that you do. So now, do you deliver face-to-face or are you delivering online?
Both. I do both. So it's been a mixture. Obviously with COVID, it was a lot more online, and now the face-to-face is, beginning to open up, which has been fun to get back out there. So I do like a good mix of it. It's, depending on where it is.
Wow, I love it. I love it. So what do you prefer? Do you prefer in person or online?
It depends on how. I love to travel, but right now I'm a mother of two tween teenagers. So I have a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old. So as long as it's not too crazy, if it's close right now, that's where we are with my family situation. But there's something, sometimes on Zoom, when you have a big group and you're delivering it, you have to really make an effort to make it interactive and develop that psychological safety for people to open up. And I think sometimes when you're in person, you can read the body language, you can read the facial, and that to me is a little bit easier.
Yeah, so I'm a body language expert, and it's a really interesting thing transitioning that to the online space. And
Yes.
oh my gosh, so absolutely fascinating. But what I have noticed in the events that we run is that we still manage to get the same level of transformation for people online and in person. And we just, what's writ small there is writ large there. We just same, but just a little bit different. It's amazing the amount of connection that you can still create when you're speaking to the camera. I mean, look at us. We're on opposite sides of the world. It's morning for me. And what time of the day is it for you, Dr. Amber?
Right now it's 7 p.m. I'm in East Coast time. So yeah. What about you?
Don't you love that? It's 10:30 in the morning.
Love it.
I love
Yay.
it. So it's great that we've got this online because we can do everything everywhere all the time, which is fantastic. I love this. So you offer workshops, and do you do one-on-one clients as well, or is this more a group work that you do?
I used to do more one-on-one, but now it's more groups. It's speaking in front of groups, and then either consulting or doing workshops or training out of that. So yes.
I love it. And I've noticed a humongous demand for speaking. Most of our speakers are like totally booked, sometimes 5 flights a week. So
wow.
it's just, I know, and also online as well. So we've got people running online workshops and masterclass from the the Qantas lounge.
Yes.
Because it's been crazy post-COVID for the demand for connection, education, and everything that you're offering, which is how to help people survive in what should be not a hostile environment, but sometimes it is, and getting them to thrive. And the expense for keeping somebody in a job is astronomical. I understand that it costs more to bring a new person in than it does actually to keep an existing one, but we spend more money the other way around, which I still don't understand.
Yeah. Like when I'll say good women walk, and that's time, talent, and money that goes out the door. And if it's with this particular behavior, if it's not talked about, and if it's not something that the organization is open to hearing, that the individual feels safe discussing, they might have no clue why somebody is leaving. And so you're thinking, oh my gosh, there goes one of my high performing women and she's just left. Why?
Yeah. So are you an advocate of exit interviews, Dr. Amber?
I am, and in the I've had them. It's funny, in my research that I've conducted, I've had women be told not to talk about that, the thing that must not be named or whatever. Like they were coached on what they could or couldn't say. And in my mind, that's not a true official exit interview. As somebody on the other end, I would want to know the good, the bad, and the ugly about what's going on to improve and be better.
Yeah, you would. You'd like it to be almost an anonymous. So that people can feel they've got like a get out of jail card when they come to the exit interview, that doesn't matter what I say, it cannot be held against me. Not recording this. Yes.
You should feel it's going to be held against you. That's the wrong.
No,
that tells volume about the culture, I think.
Yeah, absolutely true. So for many years, I worked in that multi-level marketing space, which is predominantly women. And they didn't have exit interviews until I started. So we started doing exit interviews, and I learned more from those exit interviews than I learned from the induction interviews. So that says something. So it is a powerful tool to have a better understanding of why people are no longer a good fit for the environment, and it gives the work, the boss gives the company an opportunity to make changes to for the next round as well. It's so important.
You have to be continuously evolving and changing, otherwise you get stagnant. So
Yeah, we are living in an ever-evolving planet. It's just how it is. So now, what is it specifically for the listeners that are listening today? What is it that they can reach out to you and talk to you about or connect with you? Or can you talk about that, Dr. Amber?
So I wrote a book. I have a book. It's called Behind Frenemy Lines, Rising Above Female Rivalry to be Unstoppable Together. So this talks all about the ins and outs, and it's like a journal in between. I have where you can write different things. So that's primarily, if you're experiencing this, I'm more than happy to listen to what you have to say, give you some pointers. My book has a bunch of different things you can do, either in a social setting or in a work environment. So I used COVID to write because I had a little bit of extra time on my hands. But yes, it's the one thing I hear so my book stems from my research, but I've interviewed hundreds of women. So there are a lot of stories in it, but the one thing I've heard from every single woman who has experienced this behavior is that when they were going through it, they felt alone. Mm-hmm. And that breaks my heart. When women say they don't have female friends, or they won't work for a woman again, or they won't work on an all-female team. Mm-hmm. Women are half the population in this world. And there are women that uplift and empower and collaborate, and I want all women to be able to experience that, because women need each other.
This is so true. I think there's specific industries out there that are predominantly women. I'm thinking about call centers. They are predominantly women. And although we now see several of them working from home, yes, and that's still a culture where this sort of behavior can be rife with so many women in that environment. That's fascinating. Wow, I love what you do. So how do they reach out to you? Do we just follow this link that we'll put into the chat?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
So
there's a link in the chat, yes.
Yes. Okay. So we'll make sure that that's in the show notes and also in the description, depending on how you're actually listening or watching today's chat today. I love it. I love it. So just on some closing words, is there something that you would like to share with the audience today that's listening? Words of wisdom in and around what you bring to the planet?
I think the one thing is I want anybody who's experienced this or has, and if it has lessened your trust in developing friendships or trusting other women, I just want individuals to know you're not alone. Sometimes it can be a horrible experience. I thought I knew everything about this topic when I went through it. I call it the best, worst thing I could have experienced, because I truly then was in the shoes of the women I had researched. But I think if you have been in this negative type of situation, I think you can take from it and learn what you do not want to be. And in that is where the blessing is. So sometimes it takes a little work to find the right group of women, but I do believe that there's somebody out there for everybody. So please don't give up or don't think you're alone, because there are wonderful circles or tribes or however you call it out there where women support each other.
I love it. I love what you do. It's been a privilege and a pleasure to share conversation with you today, Dr. Amber. You're a wealth of information. I hope that you come back on the show sometime next year. It will be great to see you. And we wish for you a Merry Christmas for you and your family.
Thank you. You as well. Happy holidays.
That's a bye from us today from Healing Through Love. We look forward to connecting with you soon. Remember, we've got our Pamper Day coming up at the end of May, where we've got a beautiful opportunity. Now, if you're listening today and you are a provider of any type of service, please reach out to Healing Through Love. We'd love to hear from you and see if we've got an opportunity to have you as one of the providers on the day. And if you're listening to us and you are on your healing journey, please reach out, because we've got free tickets to our event coming up at the end of May. Thank you, and bye from now.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Healing Through Love. You can get further resources, see the show notes, or simply reach out to us via our website at htlaustralia.org. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to your company next time on the Healing Through Love podcast.